Yeah, yeah, yeah. Khair, inshallah. Khair. We only started.
I was going to interject with a question for those of us who are not so literate in economics. Um, I think one of the things that I've noticed in some of the previous videos that we've done on critical content news is that some of these terms that are thrown around in the news are not broken down, and so we don't really understand what we're talking about. So could you clearly define for us what a tariff is, and why is this something that is a political tool for something for something like the U.S. That has enabled them to do, as you said, to undermine India, to antagonize Canada and Russia and China. Um, yes, if you could define this for us and for the audience, inshallah.
Right. So tariffs is very interesting. A tariff is basically a tax that's imposed on goods that are traded across borders, right? And so, famously, the EU has very lax tariff laws between the European countries themselves, right? Which makes it very easy to trade between countries. Now, that's depending on country, actually. But America so depending on the stages of American history, sometimes they've had more soft tariffs laws, and sometimes they've had harsher tariff laws, which is basically if, for example, I'm China and you're America, and I want to send you a bunch of goods, the price that you're buying it from me, right, you have to pay a premium just to buy from abroad, right? And that premium goes to the government. And then obviously that makes me as a Chinese producer or manufacturer, you know, makes my product less viable in your eyes because my product seems more expensive. So say, for example, I in China, I'm producing, a shirt for £5. You would have to pay a certain tariff on that to make that shirt maybe £6 per shirt, right? Or you could buy shirts from your own country for £5.50. It's that sort of, of logic.
So
And if you buy more shirts from them,
it's a way of isolating uh, trade and production within the borders of a single country. So that's the
it
intent.
depends. So it depends on like exactly what tariff laws are put in place. If you tariff everything dramatically, then yeah, right, that everything will be or I mean, basically everyone will be disincentivized from buying from abroad, right? But if I tariff a lot of countries and keep certain countries open, then that highly, encourages trade between those two countries. But then there's certain aspects where a country might not just might not be able to have an industry within it. For example, if a country just doesn't have oil in it, right?
Right.
Then where are they going to buy oil from? They have to buy it from somewhere. And so America has its own oil reserves. Generally, though, it finds it cheaper to buy it from Saudi. Now, the Saudi American oil relationship is very strong right now. So they don't really have to worry about buying it themselves. But that's just the idea of a tariff. It's a tax on exports or imports across borders from different countries, basically. And
Understood.
so Donald Trump wants to apply tariffs and increase tariffs for most countries, whereas naturally most countries have tariffs, but they might not necessarily have the same tariff policy for all the different countries. As in, obviously, England has tariffs, but it generally, especially when it was in the EU, had very different tariff policies when it came to trading with members of the EU compared to trading with China, for example, or India. And that's kind of the idea of what a tariff is. And so we were speaking earlier about how basically Trump has, well, firstly, he's undermined India. He's undermined it. He said that we don't really need India, right? They're not useful to us. They need us, right? And India, obviously, seeing this, being an up and comer as a world superpower, obviously is unhappy. But more important, I mean, it's not really about what Trump says. It's more what he does. He applied 50% tariffs on India,
Yeah.
and bearing in mind a lot of like India gains a lot from trading oil that we spoke about before. India buys Russian oil and then sells it to Europe and America. It's a funny loophole that they play to basically not buy Russian oil, but buy Russian oil. And so, in response to this, India has stopped buying American weapons, right? Which is obviously going to take a blow to the American economy. So India is trying to kind of economically exchanging blows with America right now. It's quite interesting. And like we mentioned before, if America wants to stop or wants to apply large tariffs to China, which they do, right? Then if you want cheap manufacturing, then you have to keep that doorway open with India. But maybe Trump doesn't. Maybe Trump's idea is let's have all the industries from within our country get built up, and so that okay, there's jobs and all this, and so it's a valid policy, but he's basically making enemies with everyone, and it's industries won't build overnight, right? So he's trying to apply tariffs in 1 year, whereas these industries won't be able to come up to a competitive level within a year. So it's a bit it's very unwise the move he's doing. Also, iPhones are built in India. So when companies want to manufacture things for cheap, right, and they don't want to do it in China, they'll do it in India. And so if you think of if we think about how big of a market America is for Apple, and Apple builds their iPhones in India, if we apply this 50% tariff now there's so much more complications. And so it kind of puts a spanner in a lot of these things. But that's something that we were seeing in the background. Just in the wider political landscape of the world.
I'm interested. I think maybe one more question before we move to the other topics we want to discuss, inshallah. I think when we look at the some of the Western media outlets, it sometimes feels like a sort of the Donald Trump show, and he's sort of front and center, and he said this and he said that, and oh, isn't he such a fool or a clown? He's saying all these strange things, and the media love it because it's sort of fresh news for them every day, and people are like keeping up with Trump. What's he said now? When it comes to these decisions, so as you said, it's potentially a kind of antagonizing multiple countries, at least in an economic arena, and potentially isolating America. How much of this do you think is, Trump and what he says and his direction, and how much of this is other people behind the scenes that are sort of orchestrating something more deliberate? With Trump, it's often when he said one thing and he said the opposite of that later on, and it's very, it's very. Well, we sort of move with the laser pointer. We're like a cat that's, ooh, and where's Trump going now, right? But how much of this is a maybe deeper strategy and something that's being done by people who are maybe taking things seriously?
Subhanallah, there's and I'd have to do research to give you exact people that were involved in this, and exact situations. But for a long time now, there's been what Trump will refer to and what has been referred to as a deep state, which is basically no matter who you have as the head figure and the head face of American politics, that there's some people sitting in the background that actually run the things. And there's certain things that are important to those people that they won't allow change. And, that it was largely associated with the kind of the CIA and the FBI and basically the American intelligence agencies having a heavy hand in the controlling of government. It's what we saw in the Soviet Union, right? There was a famous joke in, amongst Soviets, which is there's for every person that's watching you, there's a person watching them. That kind of thing, that kind of idea, right? The secret police, and that, actually America tried to not have that at one stage. And then because of the Cold War, they pumped a lot of money into their intelligence agency. And then it was used to kind of steer politics in a particular direction. And we can talk about J. Edgar Hoover at another time and how, people like that have a far bigger hand to play in American politics than whoever is currently the president. Right?
Right.
When it comes to tariffs, though, I do actually think this is Trump. But there is a point into what you're saying, which is, like you're saying, it seems that every week there's new news with Trump. It seems that, like, we're looking at all these different directions like a cat with a laser pointer. And I think there's definitely a validity to this. And it keeps drawing our attention away from things, right?
Uh-huh.
First, you don't have time to absorb anything fully anyway. And secondly, I think it can be relevant to talk about the Trump tariffs and everything, but at the end of the day, there's currently a genocide going on, people being starved to death, and we're talking about, Trump saying something about India. Who cares? On a grand scheme of things, who actually cares? Uh, if we're actually talking about the tariff policy, that could have an effect, and it's going to have an effect on the trade between the countries. But how much is that going to affect the lay person? Not that much. And I think this definitely there's a lot to be said about. There's a level of people at the background that are invested with you not paying too much attention to anything really, right? Especially the important things. And so one of their big aims, this kind of background deep state, is to keep definitely to keep Israel in place, but also to keep the Muslims weak, to keep on a wider state. I mean, obviously, as Muslims, we speak about Muslims, right? But even South American countries. I mean, if we think about how much coups that were basically paid for by America in South, or by the United States in South America, to allow, American trade to still be, good. And it's they don't want you to pay too much attention to that. And so to a level, yeah, it does seem like no matter who they have in power, that there's people in the background pulling the strings and keeping you entertained so that you don't pay too much attention to anything.
Right.
And so that the status quo doesn't change too much. I mean, if you think about, and it's kind of obvious in American politics now, and it's kind of ironic, is that you can actually lobby in America. You can actually lobby a political party, and you can say, hey, this guy, hey, this candidate, I'm going to pay for your, I forget what they call it exactly, but I'm going to pay for your,
The campaign?
Yeah, I'm going to pay for your campaign, exactly. And so if we have these huge organizations paying for campaigns, who is this person going to be loyal to?
Yeah.
Is he going to be loyal to his constituents, or is he going to be loyal to the people that are filling his pockets? Obviously, he's going to be loyal to the people filling his pockets. And it's actually not that expensive to let's say, put these people in your pockets. Like the average lobbying, and I did some basic research into this, but this would actually be very interesting for us to go into more detail on. And I know we like putting a pin in a lot of things, but we'd have to put a pin in this one as well. Is that for most candidates, you're only looking at 50,000, 100,000. And if we think about these huge companies and these huge, and we can talk about Israel afterwards, because that's definitely a far more explicit case of it. But even huge oil conglomerates, when it comes to people trying to push more green laws, but then you have a candidate that says, hey, you know what, pay me, or they don't even have to say it, to be honest, right? These companies will pay them a sum that in reality, in the grand scheme of what this company has, it's less than a fraction of a fraction. It's nothing to them. It's pocket change, right? And they'll pay this guy 50,000, 100,000 to basically be in their pocket, and this guy will run and he'll be all for big oil, and then more green pushers don't get pushed. So there's that. And so these companies don't lose any money. And then obviously it goes without saying, APAC, right? And how many American politicians they have in their pocket.
Of course.
And so that's part of the deep state. And they're the ones pulling the strings from the background, and they have the most to be gained from no change of the status quo. Because if the status quo changes, then obviously the direction of which money flows will change. And so if we talk about big companies, they want the status quo to stay the same, even if it's detrimental to the constituents of those political candidates, because it keeps them rich, right?
They're benefiting.
Yeah, exactly. There's a level in which, and I don't think this is entirely true, by the way, but there's a level in which you have to say, okay, where's the money flowing? And that's whoever has the money
Right.
owns the world,
Yeah,
right? There's a level in
following the
which
money.
that's
Yeah.
the case. Yeah. And I do actually think Israel goes beyond that. I think that Israel is more committed to evil than it is to money, right? It's more committed to evil than it is to its own self-interest. So Israel wants to kill people. Israel wants to cause a famine beyond that being within its self-interest, right? Israel will pump money into things that are objectively evil, right? Before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though it costs them money. Subhanallah. We can go over
I think that's a good point to segue into the next section that we wanted to talk about. And I'd like to start with the video, I think, and maybe we can make some comments on this as we go, inshallah. So we've got a video here of Netanyahu.
The war can end tomorrow if Gaza, or rather if Hamas lays down its arms and releases all the remaining hostages. Gaza will be demilitarized. Israel will have overriding security responsibility. A security zone will be...
So he said that, and I reckon we'll have to pause a lot with this guy because lying, this guy lies more than he tells the truth, right? And lying is second nature to the war criminal Netanyahu. Firstly, he said that the war will end tomorrow if Hamas lays down its arms. Firstly, let's not... I just want to preface it by, you can't blame Hamas. These people have been put in a cage, that cage called Gaza, right? The most densely populated place in the world. And they've been put in a cage and they've been under so much persecution, and they've been kidnapped and they've been killed and they get shot at by snipers, and they basically have all of their borders controlled by Israel anyway, right? So firstly, let's not blame Hamas. Secondly, Hamas has been open to having a peace treaty for a long time, and they've offered peace treaties that have been rejected by Israel. It's not about hostages. It's not about hostages. Sorry, continue.
I mean, it's an interesting point that he actually said Gaza. He didn't. He said if Gaza, and then he corrected himself and he said Hamas. It's, the narrative that is portrayed to the world is that this is not about the Palestinians. We're not. It's not about them. We're not just attacking Palestinians because they are Palestinian. It's about Hamas. We're fighting terror. We're fighting this is the war on terror, and we're fighting Islamist terrorists. That's what we're doing, and we're saving the hostages, right? But
I like when there's a slip of the tongue. Sometimes it shows the real truth that's behind what they're saying. And just so that people know, Hamas has said they demand that the humanitarian disaster that's currently being forced in Gaza, the man-made famine, the man-made mass starvation that's currently being forced in Gaza, that be ended before they return to negotiating a peace treaty. I don't think that's unreasonable at all.
It's like,
because you can't trust Israel to not continue a humanitarian disaster. So you say, okay, fine, stop the humanitarian disaster and then we can discuss a peace treaty. But obviously, Israel is saying, no, we don't want to stop a humanitarian disaster. In a weird way, it's a kind of admission of guilt. It's like, yeah, we're
doing this,
causing a humanitarian disaster, right? Sorry, continue, please.
Okay, I'll just go back a little bit.
Israel will have overriding security responsibility. A security zone will be established on Gaza's border with Israel to prevent future terrorist incursions. A civilian administration will be established in Gaza that will seek to live in peace with Israel. Given Hamas's refusal to lay down its arms, Israel has no choice but to finish the job and complete the defeat of Hamas. Israel's Security Cabinet instructed the IDF to dismantle the 2 remaining Hamas strongholds in Gaza City and the central camps. Contrary to false claims, this is the best way to end the war and the best way to end it speedily.
Astaghfirullah. So, this guy makes me mad. Sorry, I just wanted to say, so he said that, we're going to make a... go about 15 seconds in, sorry.
Yeah, he talks about the control,
Yeah, exactly. is
will
that
have
first,
overriding security responsibility.
Overriding security responsibility, and then he's going to, and then a border of military control around. It's like
A
firstly, that
security
already
zone.
exists. That already exists. There is already a wall around Gaza, right, that has Israeli snipers pointing guns and aiming and sometimes shooting Palestinians for no reason.
I mean, what you know.
So they already, in a sense, they already militarily control it anyway, right? Obviously, within Gaza itself, there is a level of freedom, a level, right? But it's all surrounded by, the hostile state, right? And you could say, oh, there's an Egyptian border in the south. Yeah, let's be real, right? Egypt is in the pockets of Israel. It's another Israeli border in the south. And so, firstly, they already have that. So they want to increase it, basically. They're saying that, okay, we're going to apply, it's basically going to be a state of, now I don't know if this is the real intention. I don't think this is the intention at all. But even what they're saying, it's basically, hey, we want to have military control of Gaza, right? And we want to be, basically, what they're saying is that there's going to be Palestinians there living under an Israeli police state.
Yeah.
And those Israeli officers will live with entire impunity when they shoot up children and when they kill families, like they have been doing for since the establishment of Israel. As in, the whole settlement thing was Israelis under the Israeli army. With the aid of the Israeli army, going into designated Palestinian territory, kicking out the people, forcing Israelis to move, or having Israelis move in, forcing Palestinians out, and then aiming guns at anyone who tries to get in the way. And if they do get in the way, they just get shot, right? And they just get killed. And then it'll be like, oh, he was a terrorist. And so they want to apply that to Gaza as well. And obviously it had been, but it was taking place a lot more in the West Bank, right? Gaza was, there was, it was slightly more autonomous than the West Bank. That's not to say that it was autonomous. It was still being fully surrounded by Israel. They never were allowed to have any sort of weapons going. They never were allowed to establish themselves on a serious level. Israel still, even before the war, was stopping things like jam getting in. They were stopping things like, I'd have to remember exactly, but I heard somewhere they were stopping cookies because some retard said that, sugar can be used to make bombs, and if I extract those sugar from those cookies, and it can be made to use. It's just
it's something
comical.
Out of a cartoon. It's this kind of the desperation in this portray, like having to preserve this portrayal of every single Palestinian in Gaza as a terrorist, because what we find, I think this will lead us into our into the other video quite well, is that one thing that will cause the mask to slip, the facade to begin to crumble, is when sincere and compassionate people see things so contrary to this narrative taking place that it is just no longer tenable. They can't accept that this is what's going on, and so we wanted to see this other video, and I think it's important that we come to this before the end.
Yeah,
that this is one of these instances where this is made more clear.
Wait, before you start the video, James, just as a quick backdrop to the state of Palestine right now, before we go on to, because I know what you're going to go on to, obviously, is that Netanyahu about 2 weeks ago basically has caused another ground offensive into Gaza, right? Netanyahu, they'd already basically militarily right now control about 75% of the Gaza Strip, and they've basically hoarded all the rest of the Gazans. And by the way, when Gaza was fully occupied, it was the most densely populated place in the world. And now they cut off 3/4 of that. And now there's only 1/4 of the space left. And most of the Gazans are still there, right? So we have all of those people rounded up into 25% of the space. And now Netanyahu plans to have and I quote, a full occupation of Gaza, right? And he wants a full conquest to go into Gaza. And obviously, I mean, it shows that he doesn't care at all about the hostages. This isn't about hostages. Many people saw this immediately after October 7th, that Netanyahu was going to use this as an opportunity to take over all of Gaza, right? And I mean, most of us realized that soon afterwards, because the bombing campaign that was done was just to a different level of brutality. And so, yeah, it's Netanyahu's hope, and may Allah's curse be upon him and all of those who stand with him.
Ameen.
Is may Allah destroy them all. Is that his hope is to kick all the Palestinians? His hope is actually to kill all of them, right? But if that can't be achieved, to kick the rest out of Palestine and to basically take it all over. And we knew even before October 7th, there was a Greater Israel plan, which encapsulated the vast majority of the Arab world. So, subhanAllah, in what's it called? In light of that, the IDF went in with a ground offensive. Actually, there was considerable pushback from Hamas, right? And so apparently Hamas was attacking the IDF, so that their attempts of invading were in vain. I mean, how sure can I be of that? That wasn't actually said by Hamas, to be honest, right? If it was, then I would have been more sure. But Allah knows. But still, the famine is widespread. Still, there are people being killed. There's when they go to collect food, they get shot at. And actually, I don't know if you saw recently, even the Western media, and I think it's clawing back at any sort of credibility that they have. In reality, they don't have anything. I mean, I don't care about BBC and CNN and Fox News saying, "Oh, look at the genocide and the famine." And to be honest, I don't even think Fox News is saying that, which is just shows how even comparatively they're worse. But I don't care about the Western media saying, "Oh, now there's a genocide and now there's a famine." There was a genocide and a famine taking place from the very beginning, right? I mean, from the very beginning, they had put a heavy blockade on aid. And so now you want to act like you were the good guy after everyone sees it. It's very disingenuous. And the problem is that when people start letting them get away with it, when people let the BBC get away with it and they let the Western media outlets get away with it, then what happens is the next time they start taking them seriously. When in reality, we see this all the time, is that they side with, especially when it comes to Palestine, they side with Israel, they side with what's wrong, right? And then when it gets so bad that they will look ridiculous if they sided with Palestinians, then they pull back a little bit and they say, hey, you know what? No, the Palestinians are going through a bit of hardship right now. Yeah. So
it's what we mentioned last time about this sort of the coastline of it becoming further and further and further until there's really it would be absurd to deny what's going on. I mean, and as we were saying with Netanyahu, it's like you look at what's going on, and he says, and now we're going to fully, destroy Hamas. Now we're going to really do it. It's like, what more is there except complete, wiping out of these people? Like you're running out of, you're running out of things that you can say and still not consider it a genocide. Like they're running out of the more he says these kinds of things, the more those who try to present him in a positive way will struggle, because they're running out of options of the ways to characterize what's going on. So yes, and more so when we see things like this. So I think let's take a look at this video, inshallah. Bismillah.
He was one of the most recognizable voices reporting from Gaza since the war began in October 2023, among the few international journalists who remained in northern Gaza throughout the conflict, broadcasting even as Israeli forces ordered more than 1 million Palestinians to evacuate the area. Born in Jabalia refugee camp, Al-Sharif graduated from Al-Aqsa University's media faculty. He became one of the key voices from Gaza's front lines. Throughout the war, The 28-year-old reporter paid a high personal price for his commitment to truth. In December 2023, his father was killed when Israeli forces struck the family home in Jabalia. This came weeks after death threats. Israeli officers told him to stop reporting, but he refused. When a ceasefire came into effect in January, relieved Palestinians celebrated as Anas shed his protective gear. The joy was short-lived. Israel broke the ceasefire in March. And in recent weeks, the pressure intensified. The Israeli army targeted him and his colleagues online, falsely accusing al-Sharif of being a Hamas member. Al Jazeera strongly denies those claims.
So again, we see that, just to comment that, I mean, again, as we've been building on this theme, that has to be there to justify what they're doing. You take a step back and you look at this and you go, a national military is threatening an individual, telling him to stop reporting, targeting him and family members, right? And they do all of this, and then they have to throw in the justification, just so that those who are watching this and naturally have that disgust, confusion, recognition that this is absurd, that this is just wrong, that can be perhaps clouded over for a moment. That perhaps that if we just throw in that maybe he was a Hamas terrorist, and suddenly people go, oh, I don't want to be supporting a terrorist, so I back away from this natural way I was feeling about this individual. This is what they have to do to justify the actions that they're doing. They have to paint people in this light. It's very important that as Muslims we recognize how Muslims are painted, and how then this has an effect on the way that we see ourselves, the way that others will see us, and the actions then that come about of that, as a result of that.
The Committee to Protect Journalists warned his life was in acute danger. They called for international protection, but it never came.
This is part of a pattern that we have seen from Israel, not just since October the 7th, but going back decades, in which it kills journalists, it accuses journalists of being terrorists, and then provides no credible proof. The only thing that can break this cycle is for Israel to stop breaking international law. Journalists are civilians and should never be targeted in war, and they must cease and desist.
Anticipating his murder by Israeli forces, a pre-prepared message was posted on his X account after his death, saying, "If these words reach you, know that Israel has succeeded in killing me and silencing my voice. I have lived through pain in all its details, tasted suffering and loss many times. Yet I never once hesitated to convey the truth as it is, without distortion or falsification, so that God may bear witness against those who stayed silent and accepted our killing." He ends, "Do not forget Gaza, and do not forget me in your sincere prayers for forgiveness and acceptance."
Don't miss out and get the full...
Pause for a second.
I think that's
That bit at the end,
the video.
subhanAllah, that bit at the end hit me. He said, so that God, he said that I have been truthful in my journalism, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bear witness not against my oppressors, but against those who stayed silent in face of what they saw in the face of what they saw people do to us. Who is that against? Who is that dua against? May Allah, look, just to quickly, summarize who this guy is. His name is Anas al-Sharif. He is a reporter in Gaza. No international reporters are allowed in Gaza, right? The people that were there originally obviously can't be kicked out. I mean, they can, and they're being kicked out right now. But those were the only journalists that could really report there. And, from the beginning of the war, they targeted his family home. They didn't target him necessarily. They targeted his family home, killed his dad in December 2023. Astaghfirullah. And by the way, it's not just him. I mean, we're using him as an example, right? This has
Right.
happened
This is a
to
phenomenon.
countless.
As the woman that they brought on to interview in the middle of that clip, that she was pointing out that this is not an isolated incident. It's not an accident. It's not something that's, oh, it's the first time. It's a pattern.
SubhanAllah, exactly. And then, in light of that, his father was killed, and there's been more than 200 journalists killed in Gaza. Now, the life of a journalist isn't more valuable than the life of an innocent civilian there anyway. And how many of them have died? I don't understand the double standard of seeing, oh, this journalist has been killed. There should be an outcry for journalists being killed, but there should also be an outcry for every single one of these people being killed.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a sound point. I mean, I think one way we can look at it, and why it's helpful perhaps for Muslims to bring the attention of people in their circle to these kinds of incidents, is that as the woman mentioned, it breaks international law. Now, I think at this point a lot of people, just through natural human compassion, will be sympathizing and siding with the Palestinians. But if they want a clear demonstration of something from their own reality, as to why they should be seeing the reality of what Israel is doing, if they're in some way committed to international law and to having this, to supporting this kind of system, that when they see these instances of Israel flagrantly breaking that system with impunity, with no consequences, really, that this can be another means of waking people up to the truth.
It's made a mockery of international law, and in a sense that was almost one of their gods. It was one of their gods that they thought, hey, there is a system of governance that will guarantee justice, in what my idea of justice is. Objectively, you can't have true justice without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't know justice without being told by the Creator in the heavens and the earth what justice is. But they took the idea of international law as a god, and that god has been destroyed before their eyes.
Yes,
by
it's a shattering of the idol.
Of their idol. SubhanAllah. And you're right. I mean, I'm happy that attention is being brought to this, but that attention should be given to every single one of these, the told and the untold stories. So his father was killed, his family home was targeted, and then, subhanAllah, the IDF, and the IDF has claimed to kill him. And this is funny. The IDF claimed that he was the leader of a Hamas cell planning rocket attacks. This guy is not only a Al Jazeera journalist, he's an independent journalist also. He does journalistic works for a bunch of different organizations. This guy that is reporting on a day-to-day level, and you'll see where he died. He died in a civilian area, right? You're telling me that he's the leader of a Hamas cell planning rocket attacks. It's just comical. It's so stupid that it becomes a title of sharaf to be killed by the Israeli army. And it has been a title of sharaf for a long time. And then what happened is that he's in a tent, designated as a tent for journalists outside Al-Shifa hospital. Israel loves to bomb hospitals. So, subhanAllah, it is a civilian area. It's not a military area. And so they bomb him and 4 of his colleagues, so in total 5 of these journalist brothers have died, killed by this Israeli bomb, which is apparently for to stop this Hamas leader who's building rockets. And subhanAllah, it touched me when he said that so that Allah can bear witness, like I mentioned at the beginning, so that Allah can bear witness against those who saw what was happening to us and stayed silent, right? And I ask Allah to not allow us to be of that group, to allow us to be of the people, all of us, those who are watching, and all of the Muslims, to be of those who stand up against injustice, to stand with our brothers, if not physically, then in in heart and in action, to stand with our brothers in Palestine that are currently being killed, that are currently on the front lines of the Ummah right now. And a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem, to allow us to be with them in the dunya and the akhirah. And at the end, he asked that we make dua for his rahmah, and may Allah have mercy upon him and accept him as a shaheed, and accept all of our brothers and our sisters in Palestine right now, and our children and our nephews and our nieces and our uncles and our aunties right now in Palestine. Accept them as shuhada, raise them in rank, and allow us to be joined with them in rank, and to grant them victory over their oppressors.
Ameen. I think that's a good place to end. Subhanallah. That we don't want to be from those who are silent. So those that watch this, take what you've learned. That's a blessing of knowledge from Allah, and use it for an action that is pleasing to Him, speaking out clearly about the injustice that is taking place in solidarity with your brothers and sisters. Share this with people, make it clear to them, and inshallah, more people will have the mask removed from their eyes and will be able to see the truth of what is going on by these particular instances that do shatter that facade that Israel so desperately tries to maintain. So alhamdulillah, jazakallah khair Nathir for your comments as always, and jazakallah khair to anyone who is watching this. Once again, I apologize for the technical difficulties. I think that is something we will endeavor to solve before the next stream, inshallah. But may Allah allow us all to be people who are politically aware and to use that knowledge for His sake. We'll conclude there. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.